Everybody, welcome back. We're doing another Marvel Future Revolution video. In this one, we got this guy's best PVE build. Finally here, did some fantastic testing on this. A lot of testing on this with some of the best minds in the game. I want to shout out again, Twisted, server leader / aka Rob helped, and Cookies, while wasn't on this, was talking with us a little bit too. So anyway, check out the graphic and we'll go into why we picked some of these and some of the testing we did. Hopefully this helps you build your Wolverine. We firmly believe this is going to be the best build for him in a PvE setting. A lot of people sort of doubted that Scarlet Witch one, but a lot of people asking recently, so I would highly recommend digging into this. We do good testing. You won't be disappointed.
Bring me WolverThor!
Okay, here it is. This is it. So we got the skills up there, specializations, companions, and the gear. You're probably gonna notice first the gear. It is different than I think what everybody else was saying. So, you know, we always do say that, you know, it's really about stats. So gear can sort of be sort of whatever. So don't stress too much, but we really think some of the gear sets or the skills that you lean into here are best with steampunk, because Swift Strike does some sick damage. So that's what we really lean into here. I'm gonna go over the skills, the specializations like I mentioned, and it'll lead us to how we got to those gear sets. So let's get to that. All right, so like I mentioned, we've got a lot of Swift Strike in here. So first ones are this number 2, Swift Strike. This one's adamantium claws. That's just getting out some ruptures. This one is a Swift Strike, in which frankly seemed to be the best one of the Swift Strikes out there. You know, this one technically hits harder. You know, there is a little bit increased cooldown and stamina, but you know, the animation's a little bit longer. We also had Evolved Hunter thrown in here. This one seems to be hitting the hardest, and people like this the best when they talk about, you know, that Eye of Osiris type build. And then the one that we ended up landing on, which is this one's sort of critical, or how you execute this one. You got to be careful with this. If you aren't able to execute this well, you might want to reconsider a different skill for this one. And what it is it reflects, and then does damage back. So you really, I mean, don't sit on the skill. Like if nothing's happening and hitting, like don't not use it. But if you can understand when certain abilities are going to be thrown at you, and you reflect and do the damage back, it's a pretty good big hit. And it's Swift Strike. So it's kind of like, okay, so you've got these double Swift Strikes that are pretty strong. And obviously the Mark 1, you're doing all the time as much as you can to get this stuff sort of set up. Now, I would highly recommend making sure, now this is the key to the Wolverine builds in general, as far as getting damage up, is you want to make sure there is the lacerates on there, and you really only need one. Don't stress. In a perfect world, yes, you'd have 15 stacks of rupture on him, but on your enemy, but it's really hard to keep that up and it falls off really fast. So don't focus on that. That was through some of the testing that we were doing. It was like, try to get 15, get 15, get 15, and then mark, and then, you know, lacerate and all these things. And it was like, all right, so we were looking at different ways to do it, looking at our times and DPSs and, you know, how hard it is to stay on a boss and all that sort of thing. And it's really hard to keep those ruptures up. And so you can rupture with a basic. So you don't have to stress too much about, you know, this ability here and making sure that you land those ruptures. It's good on there. It tracks crazy well. You'd be shocked how well this thing tracks. And so for that reason, we liked it. But the key is make sure you have a rupture on something, whether it's this ability or a basic. Come into the mark, come into the lacerate. Make sure those are constantly going. Make sure you set those up perfectly each time. That is part of the critical aspect of this. And then you've got these other 2 abilities where, again, this Evolved Hunter skill, it's a lot of stam. And you'll see, you saw in there, we had this one as another option. If you don't have quite the stamina or cooldown, you might want to consider this one. It's a little bit, it's lower. It's got a higher guard break, but it's, you know, less damage, but it's also less cooldown and stam. So if you're getting stam locked or your cooldowns are taking too long, I would consider that, consider using that instead. And then, like I mentioned, you've got this deflectability where it's about knowing when somebody's going to throw something at you as best as you can, and then it does it, and then he tracks. Now, all of these abilities basically jump to your target. So one of the things I absolutely love about Wolverine is, as a melee character, he gets around the map like insane, and it is awesome. I am 1000% switching to him from Widow. I just need to get my gear built up. I need to get my special cards. At the time I'm shooting this video, we're waiting for anniversary, maybe. The anniversary, which, by the way, it might have been those 10,000 crystals we got in the special card. Could be it, which is actually a really good anniversary gift, but they just didn't advertise it that, so everyone thought it was just for Wolverine. Anyway, having said that, I'm still waiting to get special cards for this stuff to build this guy in. So I think these are the skills you want. The other thing, we were playing with these buffs. You're probably wondering, what's going on with this buff? Why didn't you use that? Well, we played around with it. We didn't like it. We used a bunch of different rupture stuff, different stacks. They didn't end up good. I'll show you guys some of the different builds we tried, and you'll see some of the times. So what I like to do when I'm building skills, builds, whatever, throughout the map, I make this giant spreadsheet. I go through here, I put all the descriptions in, I make the lines, I understand what gear sets work on those lines, I put all the data in there, cooldown, stam, blah, da, da, da. I figure out what's where, I put some general descriptions at the top, understanding what things do, so I can get a micro and macro view of what is happening in game. I like to put the little icons in there too, so that I understand things. Now, I tend to put in like a little gray thing if I just think a skill is pretty terrible. Mostly that has to do with its animations and tracking. And I think that matters even in PvE, but it's something that I look at. And then I come down here, and what I like to do with this is I put, this is a formula that pulls in all that data, and then I can kind of look at a quick glance, my damage percent per cooldown and damage percent per stam, so that gives me an idea. I combine that with maybe what debuffs it has. Sometimes I talked about the animations, I color these out, and so I kind of understand. I sort of refine in a little bit. But after I get through that, I put untargetables in here, iframe type stuff. But once I get through that, I then start to hone in on the skills and see how it falls in on this chart. So as I was doing this, and again, giant shout out to Twisted, talking to Rob, talking to Cooks. Twisted and I tested this stuff just sort of endlessly. We all did different things. We tried different builds, did some Eyes of Osiris. A lot of them were getting around and trying different specs just to test it. We timed it against, the same opponent, and just to get a baseline. And so that we'd, have an idea of what to do. And then, I started to kind of line it. And what we're finding is that no matter what you changed as far as Adamantium Claws or Evolved Hunter, the times seem to be somewhat similar. So then we took off some of the Lacerate stuff, or Swift Strike strikes, and it dropped dramatically. So started playing with really thinking about, what Swift Strike may be the key to the biggest DPS here, or the highest damage, or the fastest times, however you choose to test these things. And so started playing with that, and then sort of found out and landed where we did with the best times. It was all under 50 seconds for all the stuff that we were timing. And again, if you're testing level 5s at high end, super powerful stuff, don't let that time, like it was 50 seconds, that's trash. It's based on our baseline. Like a bad was like a minute 7, minute 10, minute 30, stuff like that. And then as we got under 50 seconds, that was like a good test, at least for mine. I think when Twisted was doing his good stuff was in the 30s based on what he was testing with. So it just depends on what power level you've got things at, but you create baseline on everything else, and then you play with the skills and specs after that. So that was kind of how we tested it. We also, have the specializations over here as far as PvE and PvP types, went through those. We'll jump to that and go through those for the PvE in game right now. All right, so the PvE specs. So, I said in my other video, HP recovery is a trap. I still feel that way. But unfortunately, there is not a lot of specializations for PvE in this for Wolverine. It's actually very disappointing, frankly. But the ones without a doubt are the single target, the Rupture Lacerate doing additional damage, and then supervillain damage, because obviously that's good. Ideally, if you do the Adamantium Claws, so that's when I talked earlier, if you have that spin ability, and then you mark and lacerate, because that's when your supervillain is going to have more damage on them versus me talking. Remember I was saying basic? This, you'll lose 30% off of some of those hits if you don't get them then. So I highly recommend making sure you try to have that adamantium claw ability and then do the mark and lacerate for this 30%. And then we did the attack equals HP recovery. The max you can get out of this is 6,000. I don't like that, but again, the only other PvE stuff we were even remotely looking at, maybe some Evolved Hunter stuff, but we played with those. The one where it was 3 gives you more alt gauge. The one where it decreases the cooldown of Evolved Hunter, we used them combined, single, and the times just dropped. They didn't get any better. And then, I mean, the leech from Swift Strike, I mean, maybe, I guess you'd swap that one out. But if you're struggling dying on a battle challenge, then I would recommend maybe doing that one instead of this one, just so you can have some survivability. And then one of them that I want to talk about that is just really unfortunate, because I thought maybe would be nice, is this one. Is especially with some of the dodge abilities. Originally we're talking maybe 8D lean into this, because 8D, what it does is you get increased dodge for like 3 seconds and then increase 120%. And so I was like, okay, you dodge, you don't have to lose pay, and you get this defense pierce bonus, which goes up to 30%. But the problem with that is it only lasts for, I think it's 3 seconds. We tested this in game. Yeah, and it lasts 3 seconds. That is terrible. If this went over cap, over defense pierce cap, I would maybe consider it. But I don't see that it says that it does, and until someone says that, I won't consider even building this. It is, defense pierce is so important, you cannot risk missing 30% of your defense pierce for a number of other times in the game. Whether it's an 8-second cooldown, you might not have dodges. You need that D pierce all the time on all your abilities. So for that reason, this fell off, but it is the only other one I would even consider, because some of these other ones, we tested them, they weren't really good. So if you found one, let us know. I don't think they're necessarily really all that great. Companion wise, America Chavez, as always, you can talk about all the other companions, your Thenas. I don't really like Ghost Rider. Maybe your Cersei for defense down, Punisher. I mean, a lot of these guys, mine are pretty low, but I really just think America Chavez is still the best single target one out there. Punisher's not really doing what you need. All these guys I got down here, they're not really going to do anything for you. So for that reason, she's the only one we've got on there. And then gear. So to kind of finish this thing, we obviously said Hydra, and then Xanderth and Steampunk. So Xanderth we had as the secondary ability or gear set. We think Hydra is a little better than this because crit damage is nice, but again, defense pierce typically reigns supreme. And this, if this build is potentially usable in PvP, foreshadowing as far as future videos, whether it is or not, we'll see. But we'll have a guide coming out then if you want to see that. Consider liking and subscribing to the channel for future content. So we think Hydra's a little better versus that crit damage, and it would be better in both PvE and PvP if you were going that route, because let's be real, nobody's going to build a set for PvE and a different one for PvP. It just doesn't make sense. You don't get enough fodder. It doesn't work. It does not work. Special costumes. So then we went to Steampunk. So Steampunk is Intrepid, Dash, and Swift Strike. We liked that the best. So what is Intrepid Strike? Intrepid Dash. That is the one that we were saying earlier, which is the lacerate one, where it's kind of where he puts down a big dot. You want to make sure that it's the third ability you use, where it's the adamantium claws, the mark, and then the Intrepid Dash ability. You will be hitting for much more. You get a lot more damage. You got a dot out there. This helps that ability hit harder. With Steampunk, you will get the extra effect on it. It'll be the plus 14 type situation. It's what you want to do and want to build on it. So you can get hit some pretty big hits there. So that is what we got. We hope that you find this very useful. Like I said, we did a bunch of testing on this. Again, great minds behind this. Shout out to Twisted, Server Leader Cookies. Thanks for talking about it. Twisted, thank you for doing all the testing with me and some real in-depth back and forth on that. Everybody wanted to know about Scarlet Witch. Put some stuff out there. People are starting to run into Twisteds and your Robs out there because they helped with that build as well. And they're asking them, what is your build? Same people helped with this. So I think you can feel good in knowing this build will not disappoint you. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. If you find something different or want to know something about why we did this, please let us know. You can come to the Discord. We'll have this in our resources channel there. And if you want to link to that resources channel to your Discord to find stuff like this in the future, we appreciate it. So if you want to hammer that like button, click the notification bell, subscribe, we'd appreciate you. Until next time, hope you have a wonderful day.